You should be making noise. We're making sound. Welcome back. We are 2 out of the 6 classes from what we are calling Hebrew from Day 1. As of last week, you were able to read the first 2 words of the Torah and a whole lot of letters from the Torah. It doesn't turn out that these are specifically the most common letters. I did a primer once where I went through every prayer that most people have to say and every song, because I was a song leader at camp. And I did a frequency style. I'll show you my age. It was in a program called Lotus 123. Okay, thank you. So I did in Lotus 123, I did little notches kind of, and they added it up for me. If there was a bet, I would catch. And so my first teaching method was the most frequent letters first to the least frequent letters. And after the first 5 letters, you learn a song using just those letters. And the next 5, you learn a song using just those 10 letters. I eventually called it the Dr. J Hebrew Sing and Say, and it still kind of exists, and I'd like to post it online again too once I get to that. But I had to type it. It was before I had a computer that could do this. I did use Print Shop with a Hebrew module, so while you're typing in, all you see are English letters, and you're typing in backwards. It was the good old days. But this one, I feel is really helpful to be doing it from the first day of creation. I feel like you are going to have phrases that you're going to be really glad you know how to say in Hebrew from the very beginning. You're not obligated to know any of the Hebrew words or anything, but you kind of are already familiar with the story. So I thought that this was kind of something, as I say, when you're learning a language, you learn it with, did that just close? No, yeah, we'll get in. When you learn a language, when you learn how to read, if your native language is English, does everybody here their first language is English? So when you learn how to read, you will have already been speaking and hearing that language for years before you learn how to read anything. And by the time you're sounding out cat is a cat, and there's a picture of a cat next to it, you know exactly what it is, and you've got like instant gratification because the sounds were a cat. Oh, cool, I'm reading cat. But in Hebrew, you can't do that. You don't have enough words yet. Most of you don't know any Hebrew words yet. So when I came up with this method, it was attempting to try to have something, I call it to hang your hat on, so that at least when you've learned something, there's a little bit of excitement in the fact that you've accomplished something. It's really important and cool to be able to know that the first word of the Torah is Bereshit. There's something really cool about that. And you can now read that word. But we're going to go back, we're going to review, we're going to sing. I promised you we'd start every class with a song. There was a joke about that, about really cool. My dad was a jazz musician. And by the way, if you're here and you're watching online, send me an email that says, I'm watching. Hi, Mom. She's the only one who sent me an email last week. My dad was a jazz musician. And my sons are not specifically musicians. Ron is really good at Guitar Hero. But Max starts every day singing. And there was a cartoon once that friends of ours had hanging on their refrigerator forever that was a picture of a guy playing saxophone sitting at the foot of a bed. And the wife was in bed, and he's playing, and she's trying to wake up, and she says, must you start every day with a song? And that's kind of how we feel at our house sometimes. But yes, we must start every lesson with the song. If I forget to sing the song, then say, wait, we didn't sing the song. You are still at a stage where you're supposed to be repeating after me. But since they can't hear you online. And if you were watching this as a review, you couldn't hear you online either. I'm going to sing both parts with you. It's not what I usually do, but I will for this. So I'm pointing to the letters while we go so that you're familiar with them. Remember that the goal in the class is not specifically to learn the names of the letters. It's just to be able to remember the sounds that the letters make, so you can read it, you can sound out anything. But remember that the name of each letter starts with the consonant sound that the letter makes. Unlike English, the name of each letter starts with the consonant sound that the letter makes, despite the fact that the first letter is Aleph, which sounds like it starts with a vowel. It doesn't. It starts with a glottal stop. So, which is kind of a silent consonant, but it's a consonant nonetheless. Repeat after me. Aleph, bet, vet. Aleph, bet, vet. Gimel, dalet, hey. Gimel, dalet, hey. Vav, zayin, chet, tet. vav, zayin, chet, tet, yud, kaf, chaf, yud, kaf, chaf, lamed, mem, nun, lamed, mem, nun, samech, ayin, pe, fe, samech, ayin, pe, fe, tzadik, kuf, resh, tzadik, kuf, resh, shin, sin, tav, ba, ba, da, ba, dum, shin, sin, tav, ba, ba, da, ba, dum. You're good. You're even playing along with me on this. Now, the next we're going to, and by the way, if you've been poking around on the HebrewDoc.com site, you will have found a version of this song that has cheating names of letters written in English underneath each letter. Have you found that one yet? Okay. I'm sorry, but it's there. So if you need it initially, you can do that. I would love for you not to need it, but I realize that I'm not always realistic about that. The fact that I know the letters doesn't mean that you know the letters, and we already talked about what happens when you're older than 10 and you're learning a language, and you're older than 10. So I give it to you. But it's there, it's on the website that you've got the Aleph Bet song, and under each letter it's going to say Aleph Bet, it's going to say the name. So in case you need help with that and you want to do that and sing by yourself when you're not listening to me on there, that's fine. Now we're going to do our vowel aerobics. Be the vowels, ready? So if you have this underneath of consonant, everybody do this, be ah, stretch and say ah, that's good. If you have this, you're going to stretch this way and say ah, good. Now if you have this one, then you're going to be a little dot, and you're going to bend your ear down, and it's going to say ee. And if you have this dot, you're just going to tweak your nose and say ee, you're good. If you have these two, then it's your nose and it's your hand, and you're going eh, eh. So that sounds like eh. If you have your nose, I'm going to have to put this down for a sec, your nose and your two hands, then you say eh. I call this the fed up vowel, eh. I'm fed up. I would love to call it a bowling ball vowel because it looks like a bowling ball, but bowling ball doesn't sound like eh. So anytime you have any kind of mnemonic devices that you think help encourage the reinforcement of the actual sound, like how many times do my kids say, it looks like, and I'm not going to say it out loud, there's a capital letter that this is shaped like, and I will say, don't say that, because it's next time you look at it, you're going to say t instead of ah. So I try to come up with mnemonic devices that actually help reinforce the sound that you make. I realize that the method is mostly helpful for people who are English speakers to begin with, but still. All right, so we did that. And this, by the way, this chart, we have each one of these has a color that corresponds to the sound that it makes also. So this ah is supposed to be aqua, and this ah is aqua, and this e is green, and this e is green, and this eh is red, and this eh is red. Some of you are going to learn better by thinking about it in colors, and that's why I also give you coloring options as we're doing flashcards and other things, because if you color an eh red, it might mean more to you. So having said all that, now we're in the blues. Mr. Vav is up at bat, and the pitcher pitches it into his stomach, and he says, ooh. And then you're zooming down the tube slide, and you go, ooh. And then Mr. Vav is up at bat, and this is yellow, that's why you can barely see it. Mr. Vav is up at bat, and the pitcher pitches it over his head, and he says, oh. And this one is that sometimes the ball is going over the head, but there's no Mr. Vav. It's supposed to be a Miss Vav, by the way, but I'm not going to go. The letters are all feminine, but we'll worry about that another time. But that's an O going over. And this one is the saddest, most misunderstood vowel because it really looks like that one most of the time. I make mine longer, usually. Some books you'll see, and I mentioned the other day, in our prayer book, it's got a gap between those where the ah doesn't have a gap. There's a gap when it sounds like, and you know what it's going to sound like if these two are ah, and these two are e, and these two are eh, and these two are oo, and this one's an o, you know it's going to sound like oh. So that's the misunderstood one, so we say oh. So the one with the gap, oh, sorry. So this is this one. This is the long vowel version, and this is the short vowel version. So sometimes you'll see it like that. Sometimes, like in my word processor, you see it like this. It shows you that it's not the normal one. The normal one, the usual one, the typical one is going to be ah. And if you had to guess and you didn't know, guess ah, and it's not gonna embarrass anybody if you say ah instead of oh in some of those words. Um, there's a book that also makes it kind of like this, and all of those sound like oh. And I always find it helpful if you find some text that will give you that'll hand you the short vowel version, the O. That's always really nice. I have a couple of Torah texts, of Bible texts, Hebrew scriptures, where they do that. Not only that, they'll show you whether it's, now we're going to go below the line, they'll show you whether it's a resting shva or a moving shva. They'll make a moving shva thicker. You'll find darker dots when it's and you'll have lighter dots when it's. I love that. I think that's really helpful. So we've got below the line, we've got a resting shva is, and then we've got moving shva, and the moving shva sounds like and my kids always like to say slicha, because you just sound like you burped. And these three things are moving shvas that are going to come under a silent consonant, like an aleph, for example. And it needs what's called the auxiliary vowel. You need a helper vowel to make a sound at all. Because if I say, as I pointed out, if I say b, after I finish saying the b sound, there's an left over, whether I like it or not. It has to do with the attack of the consonant itself. But if I have an aleph and all I say is, there's not enough left over to get an out of it. And so the silent ones need some kind of help to be able to have a sound come out of it. So what we see is, sometimes you're going to see this and it's going to sound like ah. Sometimes you see this and it's going to sound like eh. And sometimes you see this and it's always going to sound like the short vowel version, oh. When you see them, if you see them, that's what's going to happen. We're going to have one today, actually. And then we have some diphthongs. Diphthongs are kind of fun. Diphthong is when you take two vowels and you put them together. I like to think of it like, you remember in art class when you had to blend colors? So you have three primary colors. What are your three primary colors? Red, yellow, and blue. Everybody says green. I don't know why they did. Everybody says green, but it's red and yellow and blue. And how do I know it's not green? Because green is yellow and blue. So that's how I know it's not primary. You should know that. Okay, yeah, you should. Sorry. I'm not going to tell you who just said green. I'm not going to tell you. Someone whose wife is an art teacher, but we won't mention any names. So red, and the thing is, if I gave you a box of primary color crayons or markers, Crayola is going to give you a primary, that was a product endorsement, I didn't mean to endorse that. If I gave you a primary box of colors, it would have a purple and it will have a green in there. It'll have like the colors of the rainbow. We like to think of those as primary colors, but they're not. There are three primary colors. So we've got red and blue and yellow, and I can take those colors and make lots of other colors with them. Same thing with vowels. And some of the things, just like that Crayola rainbow color box, I said it again, those crayons, the same kind of things happen with vowels. So if I showed you this, you would probably tell me that that's a primary core vowel, because it's a vowel that you need as part of all your words, right? It doesn't get smaller than I, but it does, because to make an I, if you said it in slow motion, you would say I. That's an E, by the way. So you have, these are your core vowels. A, E, O, and U. And any other vowel you have beyond that, you have to use by blending these. So one of them is I, is really I. Another one that really gets everybody, it's kind of like green, is that. That's not a core A, it's really A. That's a diphthong. So on this chart, we have this one is an A plus a Y is I. And on this one, we have E plus a Y is A. And we have the most famous Jewish diphthong, I would say, is an O plus a Y is Oi. That's a good one. But you probably won't think of that as a diphthong, but it is. It's blending two vowels. But I like that. And we'll find other things. But if you've got to be able to say a sound, and it's not one of these five, You got to blend them somehow. And we're about to see examples of that. We actually saw an example in our first words last week, and I'll show you what that means. So I'm going to do a quick review of the words that we read, the first two words in the Torah, as we review these consonants. So we saw this has a bar on the bottom, and the base goes beyond, and a ball in the belly, and it sounds like b. And this has a moving shva underneath it, so it's going to sound like b. The next letter was a rounded resh, and it had this vowel under it, and if all I took was the resh and that sereh vowel, it would sound like re. But, so this so far would sound like bre. But because I have this aleph, and the aleph it's silent, so it kind of extends this a little bit, we would pronounce it as bere. And then we have this one, the aleph is silent. We said that it's open in all directions, and it's open in everything, so it's just like this. And the shin, we said we were going to take the three letters, put in front of our teeth, and make a shushing sound out of our teeth, shh. And we're going to use this vowel, and this whole thing is part of the vowel, if you remember. We're not going to learn this as a consonant yet, because it's really just part of this vowel, and it's an E. So this is she, or b-re, she. And the last consonant we learned was attached at the top left, and a tail or a toe at the bottom left, and it's a t. So we have b-re-shit, the very first word of the Torah, bereshit, which means, I'll let you have it. If you want to say in the beginning, I'll let you say that. I don't like that translation. When? It could be, bereshit is kind of like, the b part means, I'm going to separate this out, so we'll take a look at this again. B means in or with, or sometimes in English we'll say on, like we say on Monday. What does that mean to be on Monday? Boom, now I'm on Monday, now I'm off Monday. What does it mean? Yeah. Nope, that's a different word. That's a different prefix. That's a good question. I mean, the truth is that if you learn any other language, you'll learn that prefixes are really, they don't translate very well at all. We use different prefixes as part of like idioms. So you could be sitting by the table or at the table or near the table, and it may translate to one prefix, one preposition, and it's kind of fuzzy. The prepositions, I didn't mean prefixes. The prepositions are mostly prefixes in Hebrew. The prepositions are kind of fuzzy when you translate them. So b is in or with, and when it means with, it's a using with. So I could say I eat with a fork and use b. But if I want to say I eat with Adam, if I eat with Adam, I wouldn't say b, because then I'd be using him as a fork. That would be bad. So this is in, or a using with, or on. So I would like to say something like with, and then this part, these three letters are the core word. Most words have three-letter roots. Resh, aleph, shin is rosh, which means head. And then the it is an instance of something. So I would say that this is one legitimate way of translating it, is that something like in a head moment, because how do you get born? Head pops out first. We have a baby world, baby universe, baby creation going on here. There are places in Hebrew scriptures where reshit is a stuff. It's a substance. It's a primal stuff. I could say with primal stuff. And the next word, by the way, is a word that you can read. We were able to read two words. So this is bar on the bottom base goes beyond with an ah. And this is rounded resh with another ah, bara. And the last letter is aleph, which is silent. So this word, bara means he created. So the first two words are something like in a heading moment, like a first kind of a moment, in a head moment, or with primal stuff. Or if you really want to, you could get stuck on in the beginning, as long as you know that you're out on a limb saying it, that it's okay. If you feel very confident about your translations, have fun with that, because I love being ambiguous with it. I think that to me, it's more glorious to be ambiguous than it is to be certain. Yeah, I feel like, what do they say, that when I'm praying, I'm talking to God? but when I'm studying, God is talking to me. So if I am not confident about it, then it means I've got to keep listening. So that I'm fine with that. I had a group come in, a group of adults came in and joined us at services, and afterwards I usually meet with any group that comes in, I meet and they ask questions. And I tried explaining things like this to them, and it really got them mad to think that it was ambiguous at all, because they have grown up knowing that it means in the beginning, and it's just ridiculous to imagine that it doesn't mean in the beginning. That's what it means. And when they think about it, in the beginning sounds like a time kind of a thing or whatever. And I'm not exhausting all possibilities even by saying something like with primal stuff or at a head moment or whatever. Bara means he created. He created. It's in what's called a perfect tense, the perfect tense. Perfect means complete. It doesn't mean you can't get any better than that. It means completed action. And bara is the third person masculine singular, which is the he did it form. And you're going to find, by the time we get to the second sentence, that when you have the masculine form of a verb, that it's usually things that God did and is finished doing. But when you see a feminine form of a verb, it's usually something that's a continuing action, and it's more spiritual than physical action in the world. I'm just saying. Yeah. Yeah. Ah, okay, that's cool. He said, and we're also streaming, so they can't hear you. I'm going to have to paraphrase the question. So that masculine forms can be conceptual, but you need the feminine form in order to give birth to that conceptual part. Well, let's see. That's cool. Let's see. Right now, all we have are two words. Bereshit, which I'm letting you translate as in the beginning, as long as you realize that you're foolish to be confident about that translation. And bara means he created. That's all we've got so far. At the first instance, or at the headly moment, or with primal stuff, or in the beginning, he created. That's all we've got. And now we're going to learn like 5 more letters so that we can see what happens next. And what happens next is one of my favorite gifts. So we had this. I'm going to do some interesting things here. One I'm going to do is, I was told that if you're watching it online and you see my box and I write the letter in the box, you can't differentiate the box. Even though it's a different color, it's hard to differentiate the box from the letter. So I'm going to put a box up there to show you approximately how big a letter is. And I'm just going to write the letters underneath it. Hope that works. Tim, let me know. And what I'm going to show you is, these are the words we're going to be able to read. These are the 3 words we're going to be adding to it. But the first letter is one we already learned. That's an aleph, so it's open in all directions. And the vowel under it is one that we've discussed. We don't know a whole lot about. And that's this one. And so what we know is it is a moving schwa, and it's going to sound like eh. And I know it's a moving schwa. This is going to be way more than anybody has to remember right now, but I have a habit of repeating it over and over again, so one of these days you're going to say, oh, I see what that is. It's okay if you don't know this yet. But a moving schwa is always going to come at the beginning of a word or syllable. That's what gives it the motion. It's going. Resting schwa is going to be at the end of a syllable. That's what makes it stop. It's stopping. So it's the very first thing. The word starts with that. So that's a moving schwa. And it sounds like eh. So that sounds like eh. The next letter we're about to learn. So the next letter is, I need another color. The next letter is, if this is my box, the box is only this big, the next letter is the only letter that goes above the line. Sometimes people write it like this. Sometimes people write it like that. Sometimes you're going to see it with a lookout, and sometimes the lookout will go this way, and sometimes the lookout will go this way. It used to be in typesetting rules that if it was at the end of a word, the lookout would go backwards, and if it was at the beginning, if there were things following it, then the lookout would go this way. Sometimes it has new typesetting, has no lookout at all. One of the things I should give you, if you look online, I think I've got an alphabet with many different fonts. I don't know if you realize how hard it is. I realized this when I was trying to teach my kids how to read English, that you learn, that this is a letter, and you learn to write that. But if you see it in a book, it doesn't look anything like that, because it's got it's thick on this side, and it's thick on this side, and it's got this thing coming out of it, and it's got this thing coming down, or sometimes it's got another circle there, and I was like, what was that? That's not what she showed me. And so it happens, and after a while, you don't even notice it. You're so used to recognizing the letter because you've done it so many times. The same kind of thing is going to happen in Hebrew. You're going to look at it, you're going to say, oh, it's above the line. I don't care which way the lookout goes, or there's no lookout. I'm fine with that. But know that it's above the line. Sometimes it has a lookout. The part that is above the line looks like a letter that you all know and love, the part that's above the line. And so it sounds like L. And this is one of those, this was the one, I have this wonderful story. I was in Israel already for many months. I spent a year in Israel after high school. I was in Israel already for many months, and I was in Haifa. And I had made my way to Haifa by myself on a bus. I was making my way back on a bus. And by that point, everything I was wearing, I had bought in Israel. I was wearing my Palladium boots, which were the paratrooper boots. They're really cool. They were kind of like tall sneakers, but with a lot thicker, chunkier bottoms. And I was wearing a dubon, which means teddy bear, which is the military jacket that everybody wears. It's just this puffy thing with a big hood, and it's perfect for the winters there. So I was wearing that. And I was just wearing clothes that I had gotten since I was in Israel. My Hebrew, I had already told you last week, most of the people I'd studied with were Israelis, so my accent was pretty good. I'm standing and waiting for the bus to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, and a strange thing happened. There were 3 people waiting for this bus. There were already people on the bus because it was coming from someplace else first. And in Israel, at least then, they even had to do public service announcements about this, and I'm sure still now, people would push each other out of the way to get onto the bus first. There was no, politeness was not a thing. They had to do these public service announcements about well, then if she's pregnant, you shouldn't push her out of the way. If they're old, they had to tell people that because they would just push out of the way. And so there were 3 of us. There was an older woman, there was me, and there was this guy who was old. He was in his 20s, I think, and maybe he was 30, I don't know. He was much older than me. But we're all getting ready for the bus, and the older guy let us go on first. That was unusual. And so then when I got on the bus, and I let the older woman get on the bus, she was much older. She was at least 50, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to remember this now, this many years later. It's very sad. I let her get on the bus first. And so then he let me go on the bus next. And by the time I got on the bus, I found a seat next to a window, and there was only one other seat. And so polite man just got on the bus and sat next to me. I already know this guy. So I said, Shalom. And he said, At Amerikait? You're an American? I'm like, how could you tell I'm an American? I mean, I spent years trying to get my Hebrew to be good enough, sound good enough, so that I would sound like a native. How did you know? What? I said, how did you know? And he said, from my lamed. That's why I'm telling you this story, not to embarrass myself, especially about how old I am now. I'm older than I think that old lady was, but that's okay. But it was my lamed that gave me away. Because in America, when we say L, essentially we take our big tongue and we splat it to the roof of our mouth. L, right? Covers almost most of the roof of your mouth. And we say L, and that's how we get it. We're pushing our teeth out and all of that. In Israel, they have what I like to think of as a dainty L. So you take the tip of your tongue and you put it behind your teeth and you say L. So if you think hard enough, you listen carefully, you can hear the difference between L and L. You can hear a difference. He heard the difference. All I said was shalom, and he knew I was an American. So I go back to the story about, stand in front of your mirror and say, yes, I am an American, because there's no way you're going to get past it. No matter how hard you try. I thought I was in. I wasn't in. But now I know better. And I don't say Yerushalayim, I say Yerushalayim. And then I sound like I'm Israeli. So And then if they ask me, which bus takes you to Yerushalayim, I have no idea. So then I'm stuck again. So just stand there and say, yes, I am an American, because it doesn't help to pretend you're something else. All right, so we have a lamed here, and I'm going to put it here. And the vowel that goes in this word, although you should be able to read it with everything, is this one. It's just that one O dot that's about to go over it. Hit the lookout. It's not going over, but it's up here. So that says lo, lo. But I could have done other vowels. I could have made it like this, and it would have been la. Or I could have done something like this, and it could have been lu. It could have been any of those kinds of options, whatever it is. But in this word, it's lo. So far we have the two sounds. We have elo. That's what we've got. I just lost part of my box. Sorry about that. I'm supposed to show you. I'm hoping it helps to have that there. The next letter is going to go like this. It's going to take up the whole space of the box. You're going to start almost like you did with the bet, almost like you did with the resh, except it's often square. But then over here, instead of attaching it at the top like we did with the tav, I'm going to leave a hole here, and I'm going to leave this hanging. So I say there's a hole here, and it's hanging. So it sounds like, it's kind of an H. Huh. So at the end of a word, it's going to be silent. Like, why do we spell the word Sarah, with an H at the end? Because it's there, but you don't hear it. So that's a, the end of a word is going to be silent. In the middle of a word, it's going to have a sound. So it's going to be like this. Hole here, hanging. And the vowel that goes with this is an E. He. But I could have done, I could have done one dot he, and I could have done who. I could have, we have all kinds of stuff. But in this word, we now see Elohi. And the next letter we have is one of my favorite because it's yummy. The next letter we have is going to look a lot like this because it's going to take up just the box. That's the letter. Sometimes you're going to see a little bit of a hangover here, and it is what I like to call a marshmallow mem. Marshmallow mem. It sounds like But this is an unusual mem. If you look at this chart, when we sing through the Aleph Bet, Aleph Bet Vet, Gimel Dalet Hey, Vav Zayin Chet Tet, Yud Kaf Chaf, Lamed Mem. Wait, Mom, Mem. That doesn't look like this. This looks like a marshmallow. That does not look like a marshmallow. It's in this one, which is the complete one, there's a marshmallow mem. There are 5 consonants in modern Hebrew that have a different shape, and biblical Hebrew too, by the way, in Hebrew, that have a different shape when they come at the end of a word, only at the end of a word, 5 consonants. The mem is the first one we're experiencing. The mem is the only one. All of the rest of them, if you look on this chart, all of the rest of them are going to go below the line. You'll recognize them as a final letter because they go below the line. The marshmallow mem is the only one of the final letters that doesn't go below the line. But the only time you're going to see that shape is at the end of a word. And it's a mem, a marshmallow mem. So if I wanted to practice with you, I would have to put like something else here so that I could say im, because it's got to come at the end. I can't put something here because that doesn't make any sense. You will not have a vowel underneath the last consonant if it's a mem. So the last letter here is a marshmallow mem, and our word is Elohim. Elohim. So, and what is Elohim? God. So Elohim is a word that means God, which is really good because so far all we had was something like in the beginning, he created. And now we have God. So the first 3 words of the Torah are, in the beginning, he created God. Does that bug you? Anybody? What? What did she just say? Nothing up my sleeves. That's what it says. In the beginning, he created God. Does it mean that there was a something in the beginning that created God? No, of course it doesn't mean that. Well, but you just said, I know I just said that. But let me tell you something. In biblical Hebrew, the verb and the subject can come anywhere in the sentence. If I want to say, I am Jana, I could say, well, in Hebrew I can't, there's no am, but if I say I write Hebrew, I can say I, Hebrew, write. I could say Hebrew, I write. I could say write, Hebrew, I. I could do it any mishmash way. Yeah, it sounds like Yoda. Yoda, the word Yoda means, he said it sounds like Yoda. The word Yoda in Hebrew means knowledge. It's about knowledge. It's about wisdom. Yes. And you're going to ask. Exactly. The verb can come anywhere in the sentence, which I think is awesome. I know it frustrates some people because we just said in the beginning he created God and they said, what? But I think it's awesome because I look at it as if you're trying to solve a mystery, okay? Anybody like mystery novels or mystery movies or something? So if you like them, what happens is, or you're just a detective. First you get this big picture. And then as you're getting more information, it narrows it down a little bit at a time until you get the whole picture and you're narrowed down on the focus of what you need. So what happens is, in this sentence, the order in which the words hit us is significant. In English, if I want to say, in the beginning, God created, there's not a lot of ways for me to say that. I can't manipulate those words in too many ways. In the beginning, God created. I got to do it that way. And then we ask the silly questions like, why did we start it with an in? It doesn't make any sense to ask that question. But in Hebrew, because the words can be fluid, the order can be fluid, it makes sense to ask, why did we start with this? Why didn't we start with God created in the beginning? Why didn't we start with God? Is God the most important part of the story? Arguably, yes. Creation is arguably yes also. And that's the cool thing about this, is that we're hitting it and getting these hints a little bit at a time, and we get to roll that around, that we can be talking to God and God can be talking to us in this story. So we have, how do I know that it is God that's doing the creating, and how do I know that it's not God that was created? That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that. And it has to do, you see, that was very clever of you. And it has to do with the very next word, the very, very next word. But before I get to the next word, let me tell you something. If I have, and it's even Lent, I can give you a Lenten gift. Is that allowed? You're like, Lenten, it's not chocolate. So if I give you a gift, my Christian friends here, I give you a gift, okay? This is for you. The third word of the Torah, the third word of the creation story, the third word of the creation story is God. That's the third word, okay? And God is a word, Elohim. When you see a word, whatever the word is, if it ends with im, that's like having a word in English that ends with s. It's a plural word. This is a plural marker. So the third word in Hebrew is God that looks plural, but I already told you what the verb is. What's the verb? Bara. And who did the creating? Is it a plural? No, I told you it has to be third person masculine singular. So the word bara, it's here. The word bara means he created. It is a singular verb. The verb is not going to lie to us, that whatever did the creating was singular. But the noun is going to look plural and act singular, and it's your third word. You're welcome. Do I see that as being significant? Nope. I'll show you why I think it's significant. It comes a little bit later on. But if you are Christian, I would like to hope that that was significant to you. You are welcome. You're very welcome. Usually when I'm teaching this, and I've got like Sunday school teachers and ministers and priests and nuns, and they're like, I know what I'm talking about this weekend. This is my sermon. I know what I'm talking about. The third word is plural and acts singular, but it looks plural, and woo. Anyway, Elohim. And by the way, Elohim in some places in the scriptures is a little g gods. It's one of the ways of making the word for little g God plural. It's not the only way, but it's one of the ways. So we have Bereshit, bara, Elohim, and the next word is really cool. And I mean, sorry? Nope. Elohim is masculine and singular, even though it looks plural. He asked if it was, no, nope. Elohim is I know what you're talking about. So eventually, in the first creation story, he's asking, does it have a connection to mercy? And does it have a connection to femininity? And it does not at all grammatically. In the first creation story, we always refer to God only as Elohim. That's the only name we use for God. When we get to the second creation story, which we won't do, no, we won't do in this class, but if we get to the second creation story is going to start to refer to God using the four-letter name of God, the Yud-He, Vav-He name, and also the Elohim word. It's going to use both of them. And then it becomes significant to see when is it referring as the Elohim word, when is it referring as the Yud-He, Vav-He word. And then, so some scholars will say, well, it seems that sometimes it's more merciful, and sometimes it's more about justice, and maybe you can see a pattern in that, and that's what he's talking about. But what you're talking about is rachamim, which is a word for merciful, which comes from the word rechem, which is a womb, which is related to the word rechem, which means womb, which can be seen, because it's mercy, can be seen as a more feminine trait of God. But even that word is masculine, even though it's a feminine trait. This word is not connected to mercy except in many steps away interpretation. So the next word. So far we have, in the beginning, he created God. That's what we've got so far. And everybody's going, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm saying, oh, of course it doesn't make any sense. And I'm going to give you this word. The next word is a word that you could already read last week. And the next word is Aleph Tav. And it has this vowel with it. Actually, it has this vowel with it. It's this et. Sometimes it's spelled with 3 and sometimes spelled with 2. In this case, it's spelled with 2. I want to show you cool things about this word. Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. Tav is the last letter of the alphabet. So at this moment, nothing up my sleeves, at this moment, one of the things that we're seeing is, you want to say in the beginning, God created da-da-da-dun-da-dum, Aleph to Tav. Everything. Aleph to Tav. That's the everything. It's like Alpha and Omega. It's the everything from the beginning to the end. The beginning to the end, when you're seeing opposites like that and the opposites imply the everything, like I'm going to tell you the long and short of it. No, I'm not. I'm going to tell you the whole story. I'm going to give you the story. It may be in a nutshell, but I'm going to, if I give you two opposites, it often implies a whole thing. And in this case, that's potentially what's going on. Certainly in the creation story, you're going to see that happen a lot. If we ever get to the end of the sentence, which we don't get to do today, but when we get to the end of the sentence next time, you're going to see a lot of this merism, where you see the opposites meaning the whole of. But in this case, what we have so far is, in the beginning, God created et. Et. Et is the Aleph and the Tav. Et is every letter. It takes every letter to create a world. God is using words to create letters, to create things, and God is using letters to create words. And the letters that spell the word for letter are Aleph and Tav. We take a different vowel. If I want to say a letter, I'm going to say, instead of et, I'm going to say ot. In the beginning, God created the letters so that God could create the words, so that God could create the world. So far we see, in the beginning, he created et. But that's not what et means. Et doesn't mean letter. And et doesn't mean Aleph to Tav. That's just really cool. That's just up my sleeve, nothing up my sleeve stuff. Et is actually a word in Hebrew that has no translation in English. It is what I'm going to call, and this is going to be messy grammar stuff for you. Some people are going to say, oh, that's cool. And some people are going to go, but anyway, it's what I like to call the DDOM. That's what et is, the DDOM, which is dun-da-da-da, because what's going to come after the et is the object of the verb. So the verb here is creation. What is it that he created? Dun-da-da-da. Whatever comes after the et is the dun-da-da-da, whatever the verb is talking about. So I know that God wasn't being created because there's no DDOM in front of Elohim. And since there's no DDOM in front of Elohim, et, it means that Elohim was doing the creating and not being created. The verb was create, we know that, bara, that's obvious. Elohim is a noun. It could be a subject. It could be a predicate. It could go somewhere in the sentence. Which one is it? What was being created or what was creating? If it's not on the other side of the DDOM, then it is not what was created. It was the subject and not the predicate. So here we have the thing that I told you about et, that God created, the Aleph and the Tav. You're not going to find that in any book. I'm telling you that. I mean, maybe there's a book somewhere, but if you open up a Torah commentary, you're not going to see that. I'm giving you that. But what we have here, and the fact that it's Aleph to Tav means ot, which means letter, and that you needed the letters to make the words, to make the creation, because God's about to speak words, and that's going to create. What you need to know is, it sounds like et. And if you're trying to understand what the text says, you need to know that what comes after et is what's being created. The DDOM, by the way, DDOM stands for definite, which is, it's going to say, what did God create? The something. That makes it definite. It doesn't mean specific, but it means definite. If I say, I read a book, I know you're going to fall asleep. I read a book. Some of you are going to not be happy about this. I am the subject. I is the subject. I is the subject. Read a book is the predicate. Read is my verb. What's receiving the action of the verb? It's not a very active action, reading. But anyway, this is the object of the verb right here. A book is the object. It is an indefinite because this is an indefinite preposition. A book. Any book, could be any book, I don't know. So it's indefinite. But if I said I read the book, am I being specific? No, but I am being definite. This is called the definite article. I'm saying the book. Obviously, in context, you know which book I'm talking about. We were talking about books. This is the book. Anyway, so as soon as I have a the book, in Hebrew, I need to have an et before it. So in Hebrew, I would have to say, I read et, the book. But if I wanted to say, I read a book, I would just say, I read a book. And I wouldn't have an et. So definite, direct, directly receiving the action. Because if I say, I read a book to the class is also receiving an action there, but it's indirectly. What's being direct is this. Anyway, definite, direct, object. For those of you who need this, marker. So you can go home and tell your mom that you were studying English Grammar 2 today. All right, definite, direct, object, marker, DDOM, just so that you know. That's the et. You are not going to, you can't translate it into English, but it's going to be all over the place in Hebrew sentences. And you need to know that, even in modern Hebrew, you have to use it. I think David Ben-Gurion tried very hard to remove the et, because most of the languages of the people who moved to Israel when Israel became a country, most of those languages don't have et. We don't have it in English. I could just as easily say, I read a book and I read the book. He tried to eliminate it. It didn't eliminate.
Could you show any cases in Torah where this is affected?
Well, in this case it did. You just said, in the beginning, he created God, but I know that God wasn't what was created. That's one very specific way. See? Okay, there you go. It was in other languages too. Aramaic has a kind of a DDOM, but and Latin does show, it doesn't have, I don't think it has a separate word, but it does have, you have ways of showing the part of speech it is by the way you phrase the word. But anyway, in English we don't. So far we had Bereshit bara, those were our first two words. They're up here on your page. And then we have Elohim et. And now we're going to do these letters. We have, this one we already recognize, I hope. We have, what's that say? Ha. Ha. Ha is a really important prefix. It means the. That's the definite article. Definite article. Ha. And it means the. And it's a prefix. It's attached directly to the word. So we have ha, and then we have, that's our first thing. We have, and there, because of the ha, by the way, there's going to be a dagesh, the dot in here. Don't worry about it, but it's there. It's not, officially going to, for most practical purposes, it's not going to change the pronunciation of this one. It's not like we have bet and vet. This is going to be hash, and it's going to be hash with or without the dot. Yeah. That's my vowel. Yeah, this is my vowel. So the, yep, nope, it's not. So the ha, if you remember, just looks like this. I could do it in another color. And then the ah is the this. Thanks for checking. So that says ha. And then we have a sh, and the vowel for sh is, I was doing blue. Maybe I shouldn't. I'm going to do another color. Sha. So far we have ha, sha. And now we're going to learn a new letter. I lost my box. That was a problem here. So a regular letter looks like this. All of them so far are the same size. And this one goes like this. I'm going to start at the bottom corner of my box and go to the top. I'm going to leave a bottom missing. I'm going to make a mountain here, and then I'm going to put a missile on here. I'm going to have, or sometimes I'm going to have a mound with a bottom missing and a missile. So I call this the missile mountain mem, or the missile mound mem. Mem, wait, we just had a marshmallow mem. Yes, we did, but that's the shape of the mem at the end of the word. This is the shape of the mem anywhere else in a word. Beginning, middle, just towards the front, towards the back, but only when it's at the very, 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 very end of a word is it going to sound like a marshmallow, look like a marshmallow. It's always going to sound like a marshmallow. But here we're going to put, I'm just doing these colors, I'm running out of colors here. Missile Mountain Mem. And the Missile Mountain Mem has a ma underneath it. So we have ha, sha, ma. It's very boring. There's a reason for it to be boring, by the way. We have a baby being born right here. If you listen to the sounds and you don't understand a word that we're saying, you are going to hear a lot of sounds that either babies make or that we make to babies. This is one of those situations where it's a little bit about both, because babies need lots of repetitions of sounds to feel comforted. You're going to say, ma, 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 ma. It's okay, 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 it's okay. You know, but the baby's going to go, ma, 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 ma. It's going to sound that out. So we've got ha, sha, ma, and then we have a letter that you've seen before. In fact, we see it right here, but here we saw it as part of a vowel, and now we're going to see it as a consonant. And this is why I have my little box there, because up until now, all of the other letters were mostly filling up the box. The lamed went above the box. Everything else filled up the box. But this one is the tiniest little letter, and it doesn't fill the box. If the box is there, it only takes up about a quarter of the box. That's the yud. I'm sorry to say that in my type, the font that exists, it makes it look bigger than it's supposed to be. It's not that big. You look at a yud here, for example, and it looks like it's taken up a whole bunch of that letter. But it's not. It's just little. See how little it is up there? So we have ha, sha, ma, and then we have this as a consonant. And the vowel is yi, ha, sha, ma, yi. And then we're going to put marshmallow mem at the end of this word. Hashamayim. Hashamayim. There's something else I have to talk to you about once we get to this, but so far we should be able to read these words. Let's read it once. Elohim et Hashamayim. All right? So Hashamayim, by the way, means Ha means the im is a plural ending. Shamayim means skies or heavens. But heavens, I don't know if it's in the sense of where the angels play their instruments, their harps, their whatever instruments they're playing this week, or whether it means just skies. We're about to find out that there's a whole bunch of layers of skies. There's the upper skies and the lower skies, and there's an in-between firmament between the skies, and there's whatever. So it could just mean skies. And from where? From the skies, from the heavens. As soon as you say heaven, though, people start thinking angels and death and other places, what happens. I don't know that that's specifically what it's referring to here, and I don't know that it's not. But that's part of this glorious ambiguity, is that it also specifically means skies. But I do know that it's plural. And it may not just be plural. The ayim ending is often a paired ending. So you've got two of. You have to have, two of things, like ayin, einayim, and and yad, yadayim, the plural of hands and eyes, and ozen, oznaim. So ayim ending is often a dual thing. So there's usually at least two of these things, but it's specifically plural. So I have Elohim. So far we have in the beginning, God, he created God, which we now know is supposed to be God created. Et, dun, da, 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 what was it that God created? The skies, or the heavens. I'm not going to, you can have that one if you want. That's okay. As long as you promise me not just to think about harps. Or one of my favorite jokes is about I always thought that it was a Jewish guy, but it could be anybody, a really good guy. And he dies, and he was good, so he's going to heaven. And they asked him, would you like to see the other place first, the place you've been avoiding all your life? And he says, yeah, you know what? Now that you mention it, I would love to see that first. So they go and they see, and there's like a party going on. There's food like he's never seen before spread out all over the tables, and everybody's having a good time, and there's big bands playing in all different corners of the places, and there's music and dancing, and this is the place that he's been avoiding. He can't wait to go see Hashemayim, heaven part. And so he says, I'm ready, take me. So they go up on this very long elevator, and they get to the top, and he sees 3 clouds, each one with a guy reading. And he says, well, wait, where's the music? Where's the food? Where's all that cool stuff, the dancing and everything? This isn't good. I need to talk to God right away. This is just not right. This isn't good. I got to talk to God. And they say, no problem. They take him to God, and he says, God, I went there to that other place, and that other place was horrible. It was like awesome because I thought it was going to be, but it was music and dancing and food. How come I don't have any of that up here? How come it's just guys reading on a cloud? And God says, what, for 3 people I should hire a band? That's our musician joke, sorry. So far we have, in the beginning, God created the skies. There's one other thing that I have to show you, and I'm going to move this here so it's kind of centered over here. You will notice that hopefully you'll notice, in addition to the vowel markers that we showed, there are also other squigglies. The other squigglies are what are called the trope marks. When the Masoretes created this vowel pattern thing where they created vowels to put into the consonants, they also created these trope marks. The trope marks are going to serve a few purposes. If you look at the chapter, in Lesson 2 chapter, all this information is in the back of that chapter. But one purpose is that wherever you see the trope mark, that's the accented syllable. So you know that it's not like Elohim, it's Elohim. Et Hashamayim, it's not Hashamayim, or it's not Hashamayim, it's Hashamayim, because that's where the trope mark is. So you always know where the accented syllable is. You sound really good when you're reading it, even if you have no idea what you're saying. To help you sound even better, you'll notice that they kind of, this is the Rabbi Jana method. This is not officially anything. There is an official way of looking at this, but this is the basic version. If you look at the direction that they're flowing, like this one is going this way, and this one is going that way, you see how they're kind of facing each other? So these two are a phrase. Don't separate them. You're going to say, et hashamayim. Put them together. You're not going to read like this. The cat went up the stairs, and not know where to throw them together. Up the stairs is supposed to be together. You're going to see it tied together up the stairs. Even if you have no idea what you're talking about, if you know how to say up the stairs together, it's going to sound more fluid. And it's going to mean something. And it does help affect how you understand the words, because it's intentionally telling you how to group them. So this one, the Elohim one, is an up and down one. It's a wishbone. It's called the Et Nachta. You're going to hear me refer to this a bunch. The Et Nachta comes in almost every sentence, the vast majority of sentences in all of Hebrew scriptures, and it usually is the middle of the sentence. And so usually I like to think it's one of those balanced kind of a scale, that you can weigh the importance of the first half of the sentence with the importance of the second half of the sentence. And remember, I told you, it's kind of like that detective thing. It's going to give you more insights into what's going on in that sentence and into the story and into the meaning if you look at them individually and put them together. So the first half of the sentence was Bereshit, and you'll see there's a pause there, and then bara is facing the next word, so it's Bereshit, bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. That's the first half. What comes next? Et hashamayim, the skies, and we know what comes next, and the land. And so the skies and the land have a weight that's equal to, it's not about number of syllables, it's not about number of words, it's about conceptual weight. And you'll find that the conceptual weight of the first half of the sentence, before you get to this et nachta, is usually about the same as the conceptual weight of the last half of the sentence. It's kind of cool to see it that way. But so now you can group them together. And the last thing that the trope does is it teaches you, it shows you exactly how to chant it. It is the musical notes. So this is Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim, and then we'll get to the rest. But it's going to tell you what notes to sing, because every time you see the L shape, this one going like this, every time you see the comma one, it's got a different music. Or how when you see like these two or three put together, it's going to have a specific musical pattern. And then you just plop the words in. So that's what we're doing now. I want you to notice that when you print out the text and it teaches you, can you see this, Tim, if I can be somewhere where you can see me? When you I tried printing it. I was able to print one page big and the rest of them just refused. It kept saying spooling. But when you teaches like the Lamed, you'll notice, like we did before, that the one that is thickest is the one that's actually in the words that we're learning. But at the bottom of the page, starting with lesson 2. In lesson 1, we didn't do this. We waited till the end of the chapter. But at the bottom of the page, you have real words that you could read as practice. And when you go to the website and you look at the Show Me files, you're going to see separated out the teaching part and the la 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 li li lulu practice. And you're also going to see the word reading practice. So you can separate it out and see. You are not obligated, obviously, to know all of these words, but they are real words. And I find that it's easier to read real words than it is to sometimes read nonsense. Although at some point in most of the primers that I've written, I broke down eventually and I realized that sometimes, because of that thing about hooking something on, sometimes it really helps for you to be able to read words that sound like words. So sometimes I'll write like sentences that are English sentences with Hebrew letters, and you get all excited saying, oh, the boy is reading. I read that. But you don't know what you're saying until after you say it out loud. And it's not like real Hebrew, so in some ways it's a detriment. It's not on this yet. This is just all real Hebrew. Any questions? We will meet next Thursday, is the plan, God willing, 5:30, and then we skip the following week, the first Thursday in March. But we will be meeting again next Thursday. And thank you very much. I'm glad you're here. Did everybody sign in, by the way? There was a piece of paper that went around. Please sign in. Thank you so much. Shalom.